The coastal town of Black Rock stood on the edge of the world, where the ocean met the jagged cliffs and the wind whispered forgotten secrets. The town was small, isolated, and often lost beneath a thick, persistent fog. Few ventured to Black Rock, and even fewer stayed. The townspeople were a quiet bunch, their lives woven together by the past, by a curse that had haunted the place for generations. Detective Lucas Gray had been to places like this before. Towns where the air was thick with secrets, where old rumors clung to the walls of homes like dust. But there was something different about Black Rock, something unsettling. It had been a typical Thursday evening when the call came in. A drowning. Nothing unusual at first. The ocean claimed lives every year, especially in these parts. But Evelyn Parker wasn't just any victim. A local historian and one of the few people in Black Rock who was still trying to uncover the town's murky past. Evelyn had been found washed up on the shore, her body bruised and twisted. The water had taken her, but there was something in her expression, a look of pure terror that made Lucas pause. There was more to this than just the sea. The report mentioned something strange, a symbol carved into her wrist, an odd mark that seemed familiar. Lucas had seen it before. It was the same symbol he had seen while investigating the abandoned lighthouse on the cliffs, a symbol that had been linked to the town's darkest days. As the rain poured outside his office, Lucas opened the file on Evelyn. The words danced in his mind, but something was gnawing at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary drowning. The town's shadowy history was calling him again. The following day, Lucas drove to the lighthouse, the wind howling through the trees as he made his way down the winding coastal road. The lighthouse had been abandoned for years, its light no longer shining over the waves to guide the ships that still passed by. The building was a relic of a past that no one wanted to remember, a time when the lighthouse had stood as a symbol of hope. And now, it was a monument to something much darker. As he reached the lighthouse, Lucas felt a strange pull in his chest. The place was silent, eerie, and he could almost hear the whispers of the past creeping through the cracks in the walls. The door creaked as he pushed it open, stepping inside. Dust hung thick in the air, and the wooden floors groaned beneath his weight. He moved through the building slowly, the only sound a faint echo of his footsteps. The lighthouse towered over him, and he knew that if he were to solve the mystery of Evelyn's death, he had to understand this place. The symbol, the curse, and the truth that the town had long tried to forget. At the top of the spiral staircase, Lucas found the broken beacon. The giant lens that had once illuminated the sea was gone, replaced by emptiness. But there, in the far corner of the room, he saw something, or someone. A shadowy figure stood in the dim light, its form flickering like a flame caught in the wind. As Lucas approached, the figure turned to face him. The woman's face was pale, her features gaunt and hollow, and her eyes were wide with terror. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice carrying a strange, echoing quality. "It's not safe. You've come too close." The words seemed to chill the air around him, and before he could react, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving nothing but the stench of salt water in the room. Lucas left the lighthouse in a daze. His mind raced with questions. The woman in the lighthouse, who was she? Why had she appeared to him? And what did she mean by too close? He spent the rest of the day talking to the few remaining residents of Black Rock. He visited Henry Shaw, the town's oldest resident and one of the few people left who might have known the history of the lighthouse. Henry's cottage was old and overgrown, as if nature had long since reclaimed the space. The door creaked open when Lucas knocked, and Henry's frail, shaking hands led him inside. "Ah, Lucas," Henry rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "I knew you'd come eventually." Lucas sat down across from him, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. Henry had lived through the dark days of Blackrock's past, the days when the lighthouse had been active and when the curse had first taken root. "The symbol you saw on Evelyn? It's the same symbol that marks those who are chosen," Henry said, his voice trembling. "Chosen by the Watchers from beneath the sea." Henry explained the legend of the lighthouse, a tale of betrayal, blood, and an ancient pact. Long ago, the lighthouse had been built to guide ships safely to port, but it had been built on a foundation of sacrifice. The town's ancestors had made a deal with the creatures that lived beneath the sea, beings that called to the sailors, claiming their lives in exchange for power. But the deal had gone wrong, and the curse had taken root. Now, the Watchers waited, and anyone who uncovered the truth would become their next victim. "It's too late to stop it," Henry said, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Once they come for you, there's no escape." Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He pored over the old documents and journals Henry had given him, each one filled with cryptic notes and drawings of the symbol, the same symbol that had appeared on Evelyn's wrist. He found records of rituals conducted in the lighthouse, rituals that were supposed to bind the Watchers and prevent them from taking the town. But the rituals had failed. The Watchers had broken free, and the curse had been passed down through the generations. The final ritual was the most chilling. To break the curse, one must give their soul to the depths, offering themselves to the Watchers, or the curse will claim everything. Lucas' heart raced as he pieced together the last of the puzzle. Evelyn hadn't been killed by the sea. She had been trying to stop the curse, trying to offer herself to the Watchers to end the cycle. But it had claimed her instead, and now it was coming for him. That night, Lucas stood at the base of the lighthouse once more, the storm raging around him. The fog was thick, the air heavy with tension. The ocean crashed violently against the cliffs, as if the sea itself was angry. And then he heard it, a low, guttural sound rising from the depths of the ocean. The Watchers were calling. Lucas knew what he had to do. He had uncovered the truth, and now he had to end it. He climbed the steps of the lighthouse, his heart pounding in his chest, and he reached the top. But the wind howled around him, and the shadows seemed to shift as if alive. As the clock struck midnight, Lucas spoke the ancient words of the ritual, offering himself to the sea. The Watchers answered. Their enormous forms rose from the depths, their glowing eyes locking onto his. And as the darkness consumed him, Lucas knew that Blackrock would never be the same again. The curse had claimed him, and now the town would fall into shadow once more. My mom had always worked a late shift at the hospital. She was a dedicated nurse, and I was used to being alone in the house at night. For a 17-year-old, it wasn't too bad. Our house was cozy and well secured, good neighborhood, neighbors I knew by name, and everything felt safe. It was always just me, the quiet hum of the TV, and my books. But recently, things had started to change. Mom started bringing her work home, and the weight of the stress was beginning to affect her. She seemed more distant, more anxious. Her new boyfriend, Tony, had started staying over more often, and Mom would always brush it off, saying it was nice to have someone around since she worked such late hours. I didn't mind it at first. Tony was charming, always friendly, and we had dinner together sometimes. But there was something strange about him. A look in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. It made my skin crawl like he was studying me, not in a fatherly way, but like I was something to be observed, analyzed. That evening, the change was palpable. Mom had left earlier in the evening, and Tony said he was going out with friends. I sat down to finish my homework, distracted by a growing sense of unease. It wasn't like the usual feeling I got when I was home alone. This time, there was something in the air. It was around 10:30 when the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Tony standing there, wearing a black jacket and jeans. He looked different. His face was flushed, his eyes wide in a way that made my heart race. He wasn't smiling. Instead, there was a look of desperation, almost like he was panicked. I hesitated but opened the door a crack, the chain lock keeping it from swinging all the way open. "Tony, what's wrong?" I asked, trying to hide the tension in my voice. "Maya," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I need to talk to you. I need your help." I raised an eyebrow. "Help? With what?" His hand reached for the door, and I instinctively stepped back, my heart beginning to pound. I did something terrible," he muttered, stepping into the doorway, his breath coming fast. "Please, let me in. I need your help. If I tell you everything, you have to promise you won't tell anyone, okay?" "Tony, what are you talking about?" I said, backing away slightly. My hand was hovering near the phone, but I didn't want to alert him. He pushed the door open wider, his body blocking the entrance. I had no choice but to let him in, my instinct screaming at me to shut the door and call my mom. But I didn't. I stepped back as he entered the house, his eyes darting around. I hurt someone," Tony whispered, his voice shaking. "I wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean to, but it happened." He looked at me with wide eyes, his pupils dilated. "I need you to hide me. Please, Maya. I don't have anyone else." I froze. "Hurt someone? What are you talking about? Tony, you need to leave, now." He didn't move. His expression became darker, almost menacing, and something in his voice shifted. "I didn't want to. I swear I didn't want to, but it happened, and I need you to help me cover it up. You're the only one I can trust, Maya. I can't go to prison." I didn't say anything for a moment, my mind racing. What had he done? Why was he here? Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, startled, and turned to see Tony standing by the hallway, his face flushed with emotion, his hands trembling. "Listen to me, Maya," he said, stepping closer. "I made a huge mistake, and if anyone finds out..." I could feel my pulse quicken. Something wasn't right. "What did you do, Tony?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. His face twisted, and in that moment, I saw something dark in his eyes. I didn't mean to hurt them, but I didn't have a choice. His hands reached for me suddenly, and I stepped back. "Tony, what are you talking about? You need to leave now. I'm calling Mom." He shook his head, and his eyes filled with something cold. "You get it, Maya. I'm not leaving. You're not calling anyone. Not until you help me." I could feel the panic rise in my chest. He had crossed a line. My mind was racing, and every instinct told me to run, to get out of the house. But Before I could even think, he lunged forward, grabbing my wrist in a grip that felt like iron. "Let go of me," I screamed, struggling against him. "You don't understand," he whispered, his breath hot on my ear. "They're dead. They're dead because of me. And you're going to help me cover this up. You're going to help me, or..." He let the sentence hang in the air, his fingers tightening. I knew I had to think fast. My brain was working in overdrive, but fear clouded my judgment. I managed to wrench my wrist free and stumbled backward, my back hitting the wall. "Please," I begged, my voice shaking. "Just let me go. I don't know what you did, but I can't help you." Tony's face twisted in anger. "You will help me," he said, his voice cold. But then his eyes flickered, like he was seeing something else in me. Something vulnerable. I'll do whatever you want," I said quickly, my voice trembling as I searched for a way to get out of this. "But I need to call Mom. I need to talk to her. She'll help us, please." For a moment, there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, and I seized the opportunity. I spun around, grabbing my phone from the table, my fingers shaking as I dialed. "Mom, Tony's," I started, but before I could finish, the phone was knocked from my hand, crashing to the floor. Tony was standing right behind me, his face filled with fury. "You think you can call for help?" he snarled. "You think anyone will believe you?" Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Loud, insistent. Tony froze. His face went pale, and for the first time, fear flashed across his features. He turned to me, his eyes wild. "Don't answer it," he hissed, his grip tightening around my arm again. But I was already moving. I bolted toward the door, my body shaking with fear and adrenaline. I flung open the door, and standing there, wide-eyed and out of breath, was a man I didn't recognize. Behind him, the silhouette of a police officer was visible. "I heard yelling," the man said, his voice shaky. "Is everything okay?" Tony's grip on my arm tightened, and I felt a rush of panic. But before he could react, the police officer stepped forward, pulling out his badge. "We've been looking for a suspect who fits your description," the officer said, his voice calm but authoritative. "You're under arrest for the murder of..." Tony's eyes widened in shock. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. I barely registered the rest of the officer's words as Tony lunged at me, but the officer was faster. He grabbed Tony, yanking him back and cuffing him before he could make another move. The world spun as I collapsed against the door frame. The officer turned to me. "Are you all right, miss?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. He killed someone," I whispered. I didn't know. The officer gave me a reassuring look. "It's okay, you're safe now." And that's how I learned that sometimes the people closest to you aren't who you think they are. And even the ones who seem harmless can hide the darkest secrets. A few months into being single, I matched with a girl named Marissa Cole on Tinder. We messaged lightly. She gave me her Instagram, but it fizzled out fast. She mostly just watched my stories without ever replying. That used to happen a lot back in college, but in my late 20s, it just felt pathetic. For context, I'm Evan, 28, an IT auditor. good money, painfully boring life. After my ex moved out, I thought the silence would be soothing. No arguments, no clutter, no one messing with my thermostat. But by the third week, the quiet felt heavy, oppressive. The house creaked at night. The kitchen light flickered. Sometimes I swore I heard footsteps upstairs even though I lived alone. So yeah, I was swiping constantly just to have conversations. Any conversations. One night in early December, I posted a short clip on IG of the snow outside my window, and out of nowhere, Marissa responded. She wrote, "We should do something cozy. You into Christmas stuff?" We talked for maybe an hour, and I threw out ideas. Skating downtown, visiting the light show, going to the market. But she insisted, almost strangely eagerly, that we start by decorating my tree together. I didn't even have my fake tree set up. It was in the storage closet above my laundry room, a pain to move alone. She said she'd love to help. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told her to come by around 9 p.m. Around 7:45, I rushed out to buy wine, 2 bottles, just in case things went well. When I got home, I vacuumed, wiped everything down, lit a candle, basically pretended my life wasn't falling apart. At 9:00 sharp, I was sitting stiffly on the couch pretending to watch a movie. No texts. 9:10, nothing. 9:20, nothing. I figured she bailed. Then at 9:32, she texted. "I'm outside." I opened the door, and the first thing I noticed was her height. She was easily 6'2", towering over me. The second thing was the smell. A suffocating cloud of overpowering floral body spray, layered thick like she was trying to hide something. We sat on the couch. She sat much, much closer than I expected. Our legs almost pressed together. Up close, she looked older. Sharper features, sunken eyes, chapped lips. And beneath the perfume, a faint, sour sweat odor seeped through. It made my stomach turn. I offered wine. She said yes immediately. There's a strange disappointment when you finally meet someone you've been talking to, and everything about them feels wrong. Her energy was off. She talked too fast, laughed at odd moments, didn't blink enough. We toasted, and she instantly splashed a streak of red wine across my pale couch. I forced a smile, rushed to get towels, dabbed at the stain. She apologized over and over, but something in her tone felt rehearsed, like she wasn't sorry at all. Trying to break the tension, I suggested we get the tree. I climbed into the storage loft, sliding the big box forward. I handed her the smaller pieces first. Then the biggest, heaviest part, the one I usually needed another guy to help with. She grabbed it out of my hands like it weighed nothing. It startled me. We brought everything to the living room. Christmas music played softly. I poured more wine. She drained hers in a single gulp. I drank slower, but even then, I started feeling lightheaded. Too lightheaded. I'm a lightweight, sure, but this was different. My vision felt swimmy. I told her I'd grab the ornament bins from the basement crawl space, and that she could relax. Down in the crawl space, while pulling the first bin toward me, dizziness slammed into me like a wave. My head buzzed, my arms tingled. I leaned against the wall to steady myself. I brought the first bin upstairs. She wasn't in the living room, not in the kitchen, not in the bathroom. "Marissa?" I called. Silence. I checked the guest room. Empty. My bedroom, empty. She was just gone. No sound of the door opening, no footsteps, nothing. I messaged her on Instagram, left on delivered. I stood there replaying everything in my head. Did she think I was weird? Ugly? Boring? The couch suddenly felt way too soft, like gravity pulling me down. My eyelids drooped. I kept checking my phone. The room kept tilting. My thoughts blurred. Then blackness. No dreams, no time passing, just darkness. I woke up, unable to move. The TV was off. Lights off. The entire house silent. I tried lifting my arm. It felt like it weighed 100 pounds. My breathing was shallow. My throat numb. Somewhere in the dark living room, I heard it breathing. Someone else breathing. I found my phone under my thigh and tapped the screen. The sudden light illuminated the room for half a second, and in that moment, I saw it. A tall figure standing directly in front of me. So close I could smell the body spray. I dropped the phone immediately, plunging the room back into darkness. My voice cracked. "Marissa?" No reply. I picked up the phone again, turned on the flashlight. It was her. Standing perfectly still, eyes wide, sweat glistening on her face. Her pupils were blown wide, like she hadn't slept in days. I tried to sit up. My body wouldn't cooperate. My limbs were jelly. My tongue felt thick. She didn't speak, just stared down at me, breathing too fast, too hard. Then, without warning, she bolted toward the stairs, sprinting with heavy pounding footsteps. A door slammed somewhere below. My body slowly came back. I could wiggle my fingers, then my arms. Then I finally sat upright, gasping. I checked Instagram. Her profile was gone. Deleted, or she blocked me. No car outside except mine and the neighbors. I searched the house room by room. Nothing missing except all my prescription meds, every vitamin bottle, my ADHD medication, my leftover painkillers from surgery, even the iron supplements in my kitchen drawer, and one bottle of vodka. Everything else was untouched. She didn't come for me. She came for the drugs. I called the police. Gave them the username, the name she claimed, everything I knew, which wasn't much. They questioned my neighbor. He saw nothing. The cops told me people like this target men living alone, especially men who drink. They watch your stories, learn your habits, and wait until you're lonely enough to invite them in. Before leaving, one officer said something I'll never forget. Count yourself lucky. Some of them don't leave after they get the pills. I never set up the tree that year, and I never used dating apps again. To this day, I still can't shake the image of her silhouette standing over me, perfectly still, waiting for me to wake up. It was already 10 o'clock at night. Nurse Mira was making her rounds in the old psychiatric hospital. This was her first night shift in this eerie building. While walking down the dimly lit corridor, she reached room number 13. Mira slowly placed her hand on the rusty doorknob. Inside lay a 22-year-old woman. A pale but strikingly beautiful girl sat on the bed, facing the cracked wall. Her lips moved slowly, whispering words no one could understand. The strange stillness inside the room made Mira's chest tighten. Her legs hesitated at the threshold, as if something unseen was pulling her back. She had heard stories of unusual patients here, some violent, some completely lost in their own worlds. But this was different. It was her first night here. The ticking of the old wall clock and the sound of the wind scraping against the window frames made the corridor feel even colder. Mira gripped her flashlight, wondering if she should step in. Gathering a bit of courage, Mira finally pushed the door open wider. The moment she stepped inside, the girl suddenly let out a chilling laugh and began twisting her body in unnatural ways. She was still facing the wall, but her neck turned all the way around to look at Mira. Cold sweat dripped from Mira's forehead. Her hands trembled as she backed away. Slamming the door shut, she ran down the corridor to the reception, calling for another nurse. Nurse Lena was at the desk, speaking on the phone. Yes, madam. Don't worry. She's safe. We're taking good care of her, Lena assured someone before hanging up. Seeing Mira's pale face, Lena frowned. What happened, Mira? Why do you look so terrified? Mira stammered and recounted everything she had just seen. Lena nodded slowly. Oh, room number 13. That's Aisha. Her mother calls every night, sometimes every few minutes, to ask about her. They admitted her here 2 months ago and never came back. Mira's curiosity burned through her fear. What happened to her? How did she end up like this? Lena sighed and began to explain. Aisha was 22, a top student in her final year of architecture. Everyone admired her beauty and intelligence, but she lived in a dream world of her own making. She believed she would meet a mysterious artist, her soulmate, and rejected every suitor her parents brought home. She wrote about him in her journal every night, filling page with fantasies. Her parents thought it was harmless. Lena continued. One night, Aisha left her journal at the university library. A young man named Arav, one of her new classmates, found it and took it. He read every page, learning all her secrets and fantasies. The next day, he came to class wearing exactly the clothes she had described for her dream man. Aisha was drawn to him instantly. She forgot about the missing journal, believing she had finally met the man. Their relationship turned intense, even obsessive. Arav isolated her from her friends, especially from Rohan, her best friend who had loved her in silence. He began writing her name in blood, sending letters smeared with it, whispering strange things about destiny. Aisha became frightened, but she couldn't escape. One evening, when she visited Arav's apartment, she found her missing journal there, along with photos of several women. As she stared in shock, a middle-aged man entered the room. Don't be afraid. I'm Prakash, Arav's uncle. He's been unwell since his parents died. He collects things he finds beautiful. People, objects, anything. He doesn't understand emotions. If something he treasures breaks or disappoints him, he destroys it. Aisha is shocked to hear that he's battling illness. She goes over and asks, What did you say, mentally ill? Arav's uncle says yes. Aisha's heart stopped when she saw one of the photos, her own face pinned on the wall among other girls. The truth hit her. She ran out, shaking, and locked herself in her room for days, ignoring Arav's endless calls. Hearing this, Aisha was completely shaken to the core. Showing the photos lying in the drawer to her uncle, she asks, "Whose photos are these?" Uncle says, "These are pictures of Arav's first girlfriend. I've met all of them. I've only met her once. Every time I'd see a new girl with him. I don't know what happened to her. I never asked his anything because the doctor had told me not to talk to Arav about anything that might anger him. Otherwise, he might do anything in a fit of rage." Aisha was looking at those photos. Although all of them had one thing in common. All the girls in those pictures were extremely beautiful. There was another photo on that door. Picked up the photo with her trembling hands and began to look at it. Aisha's eyes widened in surprise at the sight of that photo. The photo wasn't anyone else's, but it was her own. Seeing her photo on that door, Aisha felt goosebumps all over her body. Slowly, Aisha began to understand everything. Aisha couldn't bear it anymore. She ran home and closed the door of her room and sat in a corner. She wanted to scream loudly, but no sound came from her mouth. I couldn't get out. She was just standing there when her phone started ringing. It was Arav calling. 101 rings. Even after Aisha didn't pick up the phone, she no longer had the courage to talk to him. Many days passed. Aisha didn't go to college. She didn't meet anyone, nor did she talk to anyone. She just closed the door to her room. She sat alone, staring at her diary. Today, for the first time, she started hating her diary. A week later, the newspaper carried a grim headline. Young man jumps from building after girl rejects him. Arav's photograph stared back at her from the front page. From that day on, Aisha stopped speaking. She sat in her room for hours, whispering to the walls, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying. Mira shivered as Lena's story ended. The flickering hospital lights dimmed and then went out completely. The corridor fell into darkness. Mira fumbled for her phone. "Lena, are you here?" she whispered. But there was no answer. On the desk lay a hastily scribbled note. "Emergency call. Had to leave. Back in an hour." Mira's heart thudded in her chest. She turned slowly and saw a shadow moving in the corner of the corridor. A tall figure stepped out, smiling crookedly, his eyes glinting like cold steel. "You're beautiful too," he whispered. "Beautiful things belong only to me." He began to laugh, low at first, then louder and louder, echoing down the hallway. Mira froze where she stood. There was a huge difference between the world of dreams and the world of reality. Sometimes that difference can kill. I never expected a single swipe to rearrange the bones of my life. At 23, I was barely holding things together. Part-time shifts at a late-night deli, lectures I sometimes slept through, rent that felt like a fist around my throat. My parents were a memory of arguments and silence. My sister had moved overseas. I had a tiny room above a bakery in Newtown and a roommate, Zoe, who flirted with danger like it was a hobby. When my roommate Zoe joked one night, "Just get a sugar daddy, Ivy. Half the girls I know already do. I laughed. But later, lying in bed scrolling through Tinder, I couldn't ignore how easy the idea sounded. I laughed then, the kind of laugh that never reached my eyes. Still, alone in bed, I scrolled through profiles until a message popped up from Victor Hawthorne. He was 50, he said, but the photos were of a man who might have aged on set. Tailored coats, a silver widow's peak, and eyes that were far too precise. His bio, collector of rare things, looking for a companion who understands beauty. His message appeared a heartbeat after I swiped yes. Hello, Ivy. Your photo of an honesty I rarely see. Would you allow me to show you dinner? He wrote like someone who expected the world to fall into place. I told myself it was harmless. I needed the money. I wanted to feel wanted. The restaurant was one I'd only read about in columnists' feeds. Chandeliers, linen that smelled of strangers' wealth. Victor stood as I entered with a movement so practiced it could have been choreographed. He kissed my hand with an old-fashioned courtesy and ordered a bottle I couldn't have named. He listened. He spoke about art, the way other people spoke about weather, with certainty and an impatience that made him sound important. When I fumbled a joke about my student loans, he reached across and set a thin envelope between us. For a month's rent, he said. Come to the gallery Saturday. There's something you should see. The envelope had more money than I'd seen in the past 3 months. It felt like oxygen. Victor didn't pressure me for anything sexual. He called himself a patron. He invited me to his townhouse in Paddington, which smelled of old paper and citrus. He taught me how to taste wine as if I'd been born with the wrong tongue, took me to auction previews, and kept me in a net of compliments so fine I hardly noticed when they tightened. Have you ever wanted to be preserved? He asked once, idly, while I leaned over his library's balcony. The city below spread like a map. I don't know what you mean, I said. To hold something in the moment, he said, almost smiling. To keep it from decay. There are graceful ways to keep beauty untouched. His words made me laugh in a way that was too small. There was a coldness there, a habit of looking at people as objects to be curated. Still, I stayed because it was easier than leaving. Over the weeks, I watched him move through the city like someone with keys to rooms no one else knew. He introduced me to younger women who hung on his sentences with hungry politeness. Once I saw one of them, Maya, standing by a sculpture in an off-site exhibition, her hands trembling around a glass of water. She was 19 and looked like she'd swallowed a storm. After that, I sated on Maya. I told myself I was protective. I told myself I was jealous. Victor only smiled when I mentioned her. She's fragile, he said. She needs someone careful. One evening, he invited me to a small gathering at the townhouse. Zoe had gone out of town, and I almost declined. But the money, the easy warmth of being chosen, won. The other guest was Maya. She smiled at me with lips that didn't reach her eyes. The party was quiet, the three of us sliding between conversation that was polite and pitched. Victor suggested a tour of his private rooms, a part of the house he kept locked for collectors. The basement, he called it, where old things were kept in air that smelled like cedar and winter. When we reached the door, the mood changed. The light was flat. Maya was pale, and for the first time, I noticed that she flinched at his touch. I want to show you what preservation looks like, Victor said, gentle as a teacher. You'll understand. I blinked, confused, and then he stabbed Maya. Her scream was muffled as his hand clamped over her mouth. Blood sprayed against the polished floor. My body froze, my lungs locked. When she didn't stir, panic carved a tunnel through me. Victor's face went unreadable. He said quietly that accidents happened and that we needed to handle it so the police didn't turn the house inside out for months. He spoke as if he were arranging flowers. I wanted to run, to scream, but my legs betrayed me. Instead, I helped. I don't remember why. Maybe fear, maybe shock, maybe his control over me was stronger than I ever admitted. I helped him drag Eva's body, helped clean the blood. Afterwards, Victor poured me wine and sat across the table with an expression like a verdict. You understand why I do this? He asked. To keep things pristine, to free them from vulgar endings. 2 nights later, the police came. Someone in the building had heard screaming, or maybe seen us with a door shut too tightly. I never learned who. I remember the bright uniforms, the questions, my voice quavering when they asked where I'd been that night. Victor spoke smoothly, with names and alibis and the practiced ease of a man who had rehearsed an explanation. He looked at me once in court, a small, almost tender glance, and it felt like being felled. Newspapers made a monument of the story. Victor Hawthorne, collector, charged with manslaughter. Maya, the missing student. They called me a companion to a suspect, a witness, a person who might have more to say. The cameras looked through me as if I were glass to be tested. At the trial, I learned to speak in short sentences. At night, I learned to listen for my own footfalls in the apartment, to catalogue the times I had been led and the times I had consented. Victor's lawyers painted him as eccentric, a man fascinated by mortality. His eyes, when he glanced at me across the courtroom, said something different: ownership, amusement, and an inch of threat. After the verdict, after the press left, and the house was sealed for evidence, I found myself sitting on the curb outside the building, watching strangers pass. Everyone assumed I was damaged in ways I could not fully explain. Sometimes I think I was. Sometimes I think I was merely tired. Sometimes I still open the message that started it, the casual, elegant request to meet, and the words look like an invitation written in a language I did not understand. Would you allow me to show you dinner? They say, and I try to tell myself the truth, that I'd been hungry for much longer than one night could fix, and that hunger makes people do things they don't recognize later. I don't know if I was his victim or his accomplice. I only know what the nights taught me, how easily terror could be folded into civility, how a polished hand can press the sharpest things into your palm while you count your blessings. The choice, in the end, felt like a paper I'd signed without opening. And in quieter moments, when rain makes the pavement shine like a gallery floor, I still feel the memory of his voice telling me why he believed he was right, and the small, unbearable twist when someone you let look after you decides you are an object he will keep, whether you agree or not. On a new moon night, the entire village of Kalyanpur was so dark that one could not see one's own hand. Even the wind seemed to have stopped, making the air stifling and heavy. In the middle of the path leading into the village, an ancient, abandoned well stood silently, surrounded by bushes, dead trees, and broken branches. For generations, this well had waited for a sacrifice, keeping the curse from the ancestors alive. In the darkness, 2 men from the village were dragging an unconscious man to the well. Fear and helplessness were written all over their faces. They knew that if they made a sound, everything would fall apart. And if the offering was not made tonight, every member of the family would slowly die. The most recent death, that of their daughter-in-law Anaya, still haunted them. Her screams of pain echoed in their minds. "Stop! What are you doing? Who is this man?" Suddenly, a town inspector appeared and asked what they were doing. Both were stunned. They were descendants of the Verma family, the oldest and most prosperous family in the village. Their faces turned pale. "Don't stop us. This is our tradition. This is our oath to our ancestors. If we don't keep that oath, our entire lineage will be wiped out." The inspector stepped forward and asked, "What tradition? Is it all nonsense?" Then they told about the ancient well ritual, which had lasted for generations. Originally, the well was just a place to draw water, but a priest warned that if people did not follow the family rules, the well would no longer drink water but demand blood. One day, the thirsty priest asked for a few sips to continue his journey, but the ancestors of the Verma family refused. Before leaving, he cursed. "This well will no longer drink water. It will demand blood, and if it does not, it will come after you." At first, the curse was dismissed as superstition. But a few months later, everything in the Verma family began to go downhill. The fields were barren, the business failed, and famine prevailed. To save the family's ancestors sacrificed a villager, knocked him unconscious, and threw him into the well on the night of the new moon. Since then, each generation has had to offer blood to the ancient well. Villagers who had disappeared from the village, including those who strayed into the well on the nights of the new moon, became sacrifices to the curse. A brave young man, Shuresh, who had dared to challenge the well, mysteriously disappeared. His clothes were found neatly on the edge of the well, but he himself was nowhere to be found. Fear spread throughout the village, and everyone understood that the well had become a living curse. The village decided to seek help from Baba Trilok, a famous shaman who had lifted many ancient curses. When Baba arrived, the whole village gathered around the well. He prepared a havan, placed bones, blood-soaked leaves, and panchamri leaves inside. Baba chanted a mantra, hammering an iron nail into the mouth of the well. At that moment, red smoke rose, revealing the faces of the victims, both Anaya and the Verma. An old man in the crowd fainted in fear, but Baba continued chanting. Finally, the mouth of the well was locked with a thick iron bar, and a body tree was planted on top. Baba warned that the well had not completely disappeared. Every new moon night, an old man in the village had to light a lamp and chant mantras, otherwise the well's thirst for blood would awaken again. The new moonlight fell over the village, but the villagers breathed a sigh of relief. The curse was lifted, but any mistake could revive the nightmare. The ancient well still exists as a symbol of the inevitable destruction if disturbed. Since then, the well has not directly taken human lives, but its curse still exists, silently reminding the whole village that any careless action could cause the bloodlust to rise again. The stories of the ancient well and the sacrifices are told to the next generations as a permanent warning. Whoever dares to disobey will pay the price in blood.